Welcome to Monday's devotions, and as we continue our journey through the Ten Commandments, today we come to the Seventh Commandment. And the Seventh Commandment is, you shall not commit adultery. And as we turn to the Catechism to guide us once more, answer 71 says this: the Seventh Commandment requires the preservation of our own and our neighbour's chastity in heart, speech and behaviour. And so it's giving a positive. We need to work to maintain a purity in relationships, that indeed that we will be pure in our thoughts, our words and our deeds, and nothing that we do will work against that. The next answer in the Catechism says this: the Seventh Commandment forbids all unchaste thoughts, words and actions. And so anything which goes against the purity that there should be in relationships is wrong and sinful in breaking this commandment. Now let's be clear what this commandment forbids and what the Bible forbids. It forbids any sexual relationships in thought, word or deed outside of a marriage between one man and one woman. And so if you think about sexual relationships before marriage, that is sinful, that is wrong. Think of in marriage, somebody has an affair with someone else, that is sinful, that is wrong. Think of homosexuality, lesbianism, relationships between two women or two men in a sexual manner, those things are wrong. All sexual relationships outside of a marriage between one man and one woman are sinful and wrong and are condemned by God. And this commandment speaks against that. Now, sexual sin is one of the strongest and the most terrible temptations that believers can face today. And Jesus calls for total purity in our actions, our words and our thoughts, because Jesus sees breaking this commandment as not just something we do with our actions, but it's something that can be done in our hearts, in looking at a person in a lustful and wrong manner, and indeed imagining sinful behaviour is breaking this commandment. We need to understand that our bodies are to be temples of the Holy Spirit. If we're Christians, God's Holy Spirit lives with us. He does not want to be living in our minds as our minds contemplate that which is contrary against this commandment. Jesus calls for purity. Proverbs 7 speaks of the dangers of this and gives some good advice. And Proverbs 7 verse 4 says, say to wisdom, you are my sister, and call insight your intimate friend, to keep you from the forbidden woman, from the adulteress with her smooth words. And what Proverbs said is we need that wisdom, we need that guidance to be careful in this matter. This is very serious, this is very dangerous. And indeed it speaks of the adulterous woman with smooth words. And indeed the devil comes with smooth words, and the devil will justify in 101 ways doing that which is wrong. We need the wisdom to do what is right. Proverbs goes on and speaks here in verse 6 of chapter 7 about a foolish young man. It says, for at the window of my house I have looked out through my lattice, and I have seen among the simple, I have perceived among the youths, a young man lacking sense, passing along the street near her corner. That's the corner of the adulteress's house, taking the road to her house in the twilight in the evening, at the time of night and darkness. And I think that is telling us there are places of particular temptation, there are times of particular temptation, and we need to be wise, we need to be careful that we avoid that. And indeed part of avoiding that is indeed just fleeing, like Joseph in the story with Potiphar's wife. He fled to get away from her presence. He says, how can I sin against my master and sin against God? He realized that this is something that's serious and wrong, and we have to run away. We have to keep away from temptation as much as we can. But also, we have to keep our hearts pure by keeping our eyes pure. And if we're watching on television or anything in the internet which is indeed arousing wrong desires and thoughts, we have to be so careful with that. I believe that most sexual activity comes out of what has gone before. The sin has happened first in the heart. One way to protect our minds the Bible teaches is to fill our minds with what is good. Paul says in Philippians 4 and 8, finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is honourable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there's any excellence, if there's anything worth of praise, think about these things. And surely, as we think of that which is pure and true, honourable and excellent, surely that's Jesus. It's keeping our focus on him. It says in 1 John that when we see him, we shall be like him. It's seeing the purity and the glory of Christ. Having that relationship close with him will protect us and preserve us. Well, this is a real problem. It has always been a problem, sexual sin. It's one of the biggest temptations that faces believers. It's not a trivial matter. Indeed, it's a sin that's more serious than many other sins, because Paul, writing to the Corinthians, speaks about how it's a sin in the body. There's a depth to this sin which adds to the seriousness of it. So never think there will not be consequences. There will be consequences. You reap what you sow. Let's flee from this sin. Let's flee in what we watch, in what we think, in what we do. Let's focus on that which is pure and which is good. Amen.